Welcome back everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Chess.com Classic, which is part of the qualification to the Esports World Cup Grand Final being held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia at the end of July. Now, as you may recall, I did ensure my qualification by finishing as the runner-up in the first event, the Chesscom Masters, where I lost in the grand final to Magnus Carlsen. Nonetheless, Magnus and I are back in action in the second and final event. Now, the format is pretty straightforward. It's a 16-player knockout. If you stay in the top bracket, you win your matches. You play a best of 4 with a very important time control of 10 minutes and 0-second increment. So, in my first matchup, I'm playing against Levon Aronian, my compatriot from the American Federation. That came out a little bit weird, but let's keep rolling with it. So, in the first game of this match, I had the white pieces. The game would end in a very, very flat and boring draw in this best of 4, and now we'll pick it up in the second game of the match, with the score tied with half point for each player. So the game starts with knight f3. I play d5, Leavonne plays e3, and now I play the move knight to f6. Now when I play this move knight to f6 here, Leavonne plays move c4, e6, and now we get the move b3. Now it's worth pointing out that in both of my white games in this match, I've had this position with d4 being played, but Leavonne decides to play b3. Now this game is a little bit of a surprise to me because in my case, I'm here in Norway getting ready for the upcoming Norway chess tournament, so I don't want to reveal too much in the way of what my preparation specifically is, but for Leavonne, who does not have any major tournaments coming up, I was surprised to see him play something that was not very theoretical. So we get takes. Leavonne goes bishop a3. Worth pointing out that in my games against Leavonne with d4, bishop d6 being played, I went for variations with bishop b5, c6, bishop d3, and bishop a6. Usually I was not playing bishop a3 to trade off the bishops with the white pieces, but nonetheless, this is all very, very boring. So we get bishop a3. I trade the bishops, I play c5, Leavonne goes d4, I castle, and now we get the move rook c1. Now what white is aiming for here is white wants a situation where I have to trade off the pawns, and white gets what's known as a bastion, this great knight on d4, and black having this isolated pawn on d5. There are no pawns on the files next to it to connect, so this pawn is potentially very weak. Therefore, I play the move queen to e7, guarding the pawn on c5, and now in this position, Leavonne plays the move knight to b5. Now, after Leavonne plays knight b5, here I play the move bishop b7. It's important to note that if I were to go pawn takes pawn, for example, white has some nasty threats like a knight c7 idea here to try and trap the rook in the corner, so I simply don't want to go for that. So I play bishop b7, bishop b2, knight d7, castles, a6, knight c3, and here I play the move rook a c8. Now Leavonne takes a pawn on c5, and this is where I have a very interesting decision. Now, I can take with the rook, or the knight potentially, but if I take with either of these pieces, white has knight d4, and once again, I have the isolated pawn. Now, I could also take with the pawn on c5, and this would create the classic hanging pawn structure, where I have these pawns on c5 and d5. This also is completely fine. Ultimately, I went for the move rook c5 because being a meme lord, being a streamer on the internet, I wanted to set up some double or potentially some triple stacks on the file. So even though I'm giving white the square and I have the isolated pawn, I'm trusting that I will have enough counterplay on the c file to offset this one square on d4, which I continue to highlight. So Leavonne goes knight a4. I trade, go play rook c8, queen b2, and here I play the move knight e4. Now, when I played this move knight e4, this was based on a pure miscalculation all the way back when I had played rook takes c5, because I actually thought that this line with queen b2, knight e4, rook c1 was not possible due to pawn to b5 attacking the horse. The knight has no squares on c5 or b6, and if white plays the move knight c3 here, I have the great move queen to c5, and the double stack wins the game, as white will lose either the knight. If you don't move it, say you go here, you lose the horse. And if you take the horse, I can take the rook. And now at the end of this big long exchange, I'm simply left with an extra rook, and I will win very soon. So, what I thought that this line was just winning. However, if I play the move b5 here after rook takes, rook, bishop takes, again, if white were to go knight c3, I have this idea with queen to f6, creating a classic 90-degree right triangle. White can't play knight d4 to prevent losing the knight, because then I take the pawn, and I create the classic ice skater checkmate. So after queen f6, I create the threats towards the pawn, and of course I create the threats towards the queen, creating the 90-degree right triangle. The only way for white to continue is knight to d1, saving the piece. But after the trade, knight c3, let's say king f1, and knight takes a2. Black has an extra pawn on the queen side, and if anybody can win, it will be me. So, the line that I actually miscalculated was that after takes, white can play the move queen to c2 here, attacking the bishop. So if I take the knight, white takes the bishop, even trade. If I move my bishop to b7, now there's a move queen c7 attacking the bishop, and suddenly the knight is pinned. I can't move the knight because then I lose the queen, and out of nowhere, I'm simply losing the game. So let's say I play queen f8, another option after knight b2. Here, there are no tricks with a pin on the file. White gets a square on d4, white controls the c file, and white is going to have great chance to win the game, or so I think, even though, as I look at the evaluation, computer thinks that white is actually not better at all. So instead, I go for this line with queen to d8. Leavonne plays knight d4. I play g6 here. An important move because I create the classic square for the king to avoid any ice skate or checkmates here, but also g6 stops knight from ever coming to f5 and creating all kinds of threats. Leavonne trades the rooks, bishop g4, f5, bishop f3, and now I play the move b5, kicking the knight. Leavonne has to take this knight on e4, rather regrettably. I take, and now we get the move knight c3. Now, I actually expected Leavonne to make a draw here with the move knight to e6, lining up the classic checkmate on g7, because here, after king to f7, knight g5, if I go back to g8, there's knight e6 with at least a draw, or white can play the move knight c3. I was rather shocked that Leavonne played knight c3, primarily because in this position, even though white has an outpost for the knight on d4, I have a connect 4, there's no isolated pawn blockaded, and after knight to e5, I'm angling for the classic connect 5 here, which should be more than enough compensation to at least equalize. So Leavonne plays knight e2, go knight d3, queen a1, and now I play the move b4. Now this move is based on a very deep fundamental understanding of endgames, which is that in an endgame, let's just say, for example, I'm going to ignore the queens coming off here. If we reach some endgame, you'll notice here that white's pawns can become targets, whereas my pawns are on the opposite color here. So in an endgame, if I can fix the pawns on the opposite color of the bishop, this should be very good for me. Conversely, if we get some position, just to illustrate it, I'm just going to make some moves here. We get something like this, and don't worry, I'm just blundering all over the place. If we get some position like this, just to illustrate it here, black is probably still okay here, but the bishop cannot attack any of these pawns on the queen side. They are on the opposite color. So I go b4. Leavonne plays a3, a5, takes. We get the move h4, and now I play the move queen a8. Now it's very important here that I don't let this white queen enter on either the c or the a file, because with all these pawns being advanced on the board, this king has no protection here. I don't have a bishop near the king. I don't have any pieces, so I have to make sure that this queen does not get into the game. So I go queen a8. Leavonne plays the move queen to b1, and now I play queen a3. We get the move h5, and here I play the move queen b2. Now, had Leavonne tried to go for the move queen c2, I have queen to a1 check, king h2, and now after knight takes f2, queen c4, and king to h8, I should be completely fine here. So I'm threatening queen h1, I'm threatening knight g4, and I think if anybody's to be careful, it's white. Actually, queen c5 is apparently a draw, I don't know why, but there's no chance of losing. But when Leavonne plays h5 and I get queen b2, now this white queen cannot infiltrate on either the c or the a file here, and at this point, I knew that I should at least draw the game. Leavonne trades, knight f4, king f7, knight e6, and now I play the move king f6. Important that I don't get sloppy and play a move like pawn takes pawn, because after knight to d8 check, it's a classic fork, it's Spaghettiio time, I lose the bishop, and I lose the game. So I go for the move king to f6. Now I just realized the sound might be a little bit soft here, so let me try to adjust it on the fly while we do this recap. Let me make sure that I get the sounds right. I do apologize if I'm being paranoid and the sounds aren't loud enough, but I'm going to up the microphone quite a bit to 75, just because I did a Zoom interview afterwards, and it might have been changed. So if the sound was off for the first 10 minutes of this video, I do apologize, but that is what it's going to have to be like. So, and I do apologize if I did just burst your eardrums as well. So I go king to f6. Leavonne trades the pawns on g6, and now he plays this move knight to c5. Now, after Leavonne plays this move knight to c5 in this position here, 1 second, I'm still a little bit paranoid about this. Yes. Yes, that's good. As I was saying, after this move knight to c5, I play the move bishop d5, and here white really should not have any chance of winning, primarily because this pawn on b3 always needs to be guarded, and if the knight ever goes to a6, for example, I have knight to d3 guarding my weakness, so these two pawns are basically both weaknesses. This knight is stuck guarding, and my knight always can guard the pawn, so there's no risk of losing. So Leavonne goes king f1. I go king to e5, here he plays f4, and it's very important to note that if white were able to get this king all the way over to d2, and then c2, for example, my knight could be getting trapped here. After knight d3, it's still probably a draw technically, but I don't want to allow this. I'm very lucky that what my king gets here, this knight which covers a d3 square, my king is getting here to kick this knight, so my knight will always have a safe home on this d3 spot. So here we get f4. Now, this move is a big mistake from Leavonne. I think at this point, Leavonne was already struggling. I don't know if he didn't sense the danger. Around this point, I was starting to get a little bit optimistic, because I suddenly realized this knight on c5, it's kind of running out of squares here. If the knight doesn't move to d, let's say the knight goes to d7, after king d6, knight f6, and bishop f7, this knight is kind of stuck here. There aren't really squares available. My knight's going to come to d3 and c5 or c1 to go after his pawn on b3. I also have king e7 to try and trap the knight, and it's already a little bit scared. But when Leavonne plays f4 and I go king to d6, out of nowhere, this poor horse on c5 is going to die, literally. So Leavonne plays move knight to a6. Now, if he were to go knight a4, for example, after takes, I have b3, and this king is one square too far away. For example, if white were to go king e2, king d6, and knight a4, it's still bad after knight d3, but if I were to trade, the king is in time to stop the pawn from queening. But here, the king is simply too far away, so now you can't go knight a4. Leavonne plays move knight a6. I go knight to d3, the classic connect 4, but the knight guards the pawn, and now this knight is simply going to get trapped. Leavonne goes knight b5. If he were to play king e2, there's now the move bishop b7, knight b5, king c6. If white goes for the move knight to c7, I have king b6, and one of the horses is going to collapse here. If you put the other knight on c7, I can just go knight c1, take the pawn, knight c5, and here these knights can never move as they're stuck guarding each other for eternity. So Leavonne plays knight b5, king c6, knight d4, and now I go king b7, and the poor horsey here is trapped. These two squares are covered by the king. If you go to c5, the knight covers, and the knight covers the b4 square. At this point, Leavonne started shaking his head. He played the move knight takes b4, I take the horse, and now I simply have an extra bishop for one pawn, and with correct technique, I should win the game. So king f2, knight c6, knight b5, king b6, I take, and eventually, after king c5, Leavonne resigns. I'm simply going to walk this king up the board and win the game. So, I get a very big win in the second game with the black pieces. Now, in the third game, we would draw, and this brings us to the pivotal fourth game of the match. Now, I'm going to skip way ahead in this game because I don't have a ton of time to do the recap with Title Tuesday coming up. So, we're going to skip way ahead to the late endgame. Now, we're going to pick up a moment here after knight to e5, king g7, a4, knight f6. I'm just going forward, where we reach this endgame here where black has two knights for a rook, but I am going to end up in a time scramble. So we keep going. Here I keep moving fast. We get this position where I go knight d6, here knight e4. Ignore the moves, of course, because I'm going really fast for you guys. But we reach this moment where, at this point, I take and we get to move rook b5. Now, at this point, I should never be losing in this game. I have two knights for a rook, even pawns on the king side, but you will notice that I have 19 seconds. Leavonne has 24 with no increment. So I play the move rook to d6 here. After rook to d6, Leavonne goes rook e1, rook d5, rook b4, king f5. We keep going. Eventually, we reach this moment where I play rook h5, I take, and now I blunder horribly with this move knight g5. Now, I am down 5 seconds on the clock here, but had I played a move like rook g4, followed by h5 and h4, I should really never lose this game ever. Just should never lose at all. But once I play the move knight to g5, back here, and I hang this pawn on g3. Now I'm down 7 seconds, no increment. I'm simply not able to save the game, primarily because Leavonne's moves with the two rooks are easier. I can't just set up a fortress. I can't create easy attacks. And eventually I end up getting flagged in this game. I do make a huge blunder with knight e4. This is a pre-move that I make right away. Maybe I should have pre-moved knight d5. At any rate, down 3 seconds, I end up making the big error with knight e4. And after king f4, I end up losing this game eventually. I think Leavonne finds his checkmate. With 1 second on the clock, I end up losing a heartbreaking fourth game in this match, which means that the match ends up tied with a score of 2-2, and we go to the classic Megodon. So, we go to the Megodon, and in this Megodon game, I bid 6 minutes and 58 seconds. Leavonne bid 7 minutes and 58 seconds, which means I get the black piece in the game, but I have draw odds. So Leavonne with 3 extra minutes on the clock from the get-go, and the game starts with the move knight f3. We reach the same opening here with this with the c4, again playing for this very slow e3, d4, c4 setup. I trade, I castle, play the move e5. At this point, one of the great things is that in this opening, I'm just moving instantly. I'm not going into a deep tank. Leavonne plays h3, a6 with the idea of b5. We get a4, b6 to fianchetto the bishop, b3, bishop b7, bishop b2, queen e7, and now Leavonne plays the move rook c1. Here I go rook d8, we get rook e1, and now I play the move c6. Now again, this is keeping with the theme of just moving fast, because I told myself in my mind after losing the fourth game where I got flagged, lose on the clock, lose on the board if anything, do not lose on the clock. If you move fast, you will have no issues on the clock. If you blunder, so be it, but just move fast. Now, I could have spent time here and played a move like e4, which is the best computer line, but after knight to d2, I have to come up with a plan, and again, I don't want to get too low on time. White can play for f3, there's also queen to e2, and I'm going to have to be very precise. So I play c6, which creates an obvious idea of playing for the move b5 to kick this bishop off the diagonal. Leavonne plays knight d2, b5, bishop d3, and now I play the move rook e8. Leavonne goes rook e2, and here I play the move bishop a3. Now you will notice that up to this point, I have used 30 seconds for the first 17 moves. I am moving as though this is a bullet game, and I'm really trying to put pressure on the clock for Leavonne because I do know that traditionally he is slower than I am. So we get the trade. Leavonne plays knight e4, and now I trade on d4. Now, this is a move that I probably should not have played, but again, I did not want to get super low on the clock. I'm trying very early to build an advantage or maybe get the time to even if possible, so I'm just moving instantly. So I go queen b4, we get knight f3, and here I play the move knight to d5. Apparently, I should have played the waiting move g6 here, but this is a tough move to play simply because I'm worried about ideas on the queen side here, and it's not a concrete plan, and I'm a little bit worried that something might be loose. So I go knight d5, Leavonne plays queen e1, and now I take this pawn on b3. Now this move is apparently a huge mistake, but I simply didn't see it. So you'll notice that up to this point, most of my moves are pretty quick, but I just go for it. Now, when I went for this, I saw that knight to f6 check is not an idea because I can take the knight, and now the rook on e8 is simply guarded after takes. The knight guards the rook against the checkmate. So then I thought, well, there's knight d6, there's knight c5. There are other knight jumps, but after knight c5, I can simply trade. And after takes, I have knight takes c5, and I should be fine. Now, oddly enough, knight to c5 is winning here for white, but it's only because of a dramatic tactic, which obviously both of us missed. Now, after the move knight to c5, white is threatening to take this rook on e8. So if I take the knight, after rook, takes, this is the classic ice skater checkmate. So of course, I'm going to play the move rook takes rook. Now, the reason that this is winning for white is after rook takes e2, there's a stunning move, queen to a5, ignoring the rook here. The knight attacks the queen, but the queen attacks the rook with the ice skater checkmate. And after queen to a5, white is simply winning. If I take the knight, it's checkmate here on d8. If I move my queen, after takes, knight to f8, white can simply move the rook to f1 here, and the bishop's under attack, the pawn is weak, there's knight g5, everything is hanging here, and I will lose the game. But Leavonne instead plays the move knight to d6. Now this might be a little bit of the Hikaru effect, because after I trade the rooks, Leavonne takes with the queen, logical move. If you were to take with the bishop, it just feels like after rook to b8, white doesn't have anything immediately for the pawn that you sacrifice on the queen side. So Leavonne takes with the queen, but now I have the crushing move queen to a3, attacking the knight and the rook at the same time. So Leavonne takes this pawn, going for a Greek gift. Here I play king f8. Important that I don't take this bishop, because after queen c2, checking the king, I move, and after knight b7, suddenly the queen guards the rook, and white is only marginally worse. So I go king to f8, continuing to attack the knight and the rook. Leavonne plays rook c5, I take, he takes, and now I play the move queen c5. Now this is a move that I was very proud of, even if it's not the best move, because what it does is it simplifies the situation. Now bishop c8 is probably also good, but after a move like knight to e5, these knights are very active, and there are chances for me to end up in trouble. Whereas in the game, when I take, Leavonne takes a bishop, I play queen c1. This isn't an endgame here. I should never be in danger because I have more than enough pawns for the knight and the bishop. Now what Leavonne should have played is queen f1, trading into the endgame. But after rook to e8 with a 3-on-1 on the queen's side, I should never really be in danger of losing this game. And I have 4 minutes on the clock, meaning the technique won't be that difficult. Leavonne goes king h2 instead. I play rook e8. Queen d3, and now I get the move g6, trapping the sad bishop in the corner. This, of course, is the famous Bobby Fischer bishop, where it gets trapped, and at this point, it's all over for Leavonne. Now, Leavonne plays move pawn takes pawn. He could have sacked the bishop, but after takes, queen to f4, king h1, queen c1. White cannot simply make a draw by repetition, as you will lose the match, and after knight g1 and the move rook to e1, I should never be in danger of losing. Maybe I won't win, but at the very least I won't lose, which means the match is over. So Leavonne trades on b5, goes knight a5, and now I play the move queen f4, g3, queen to e4. I'm more than happy to trade the queens because this bishop is stuck on the edge of the board. We get queen b3, king g7, queen b2, and now I play the important move knight to f6. Were I to take this bishop, after knight g5, the knight forks the king and the queen, and I lose in an absolute disaster. So I go knight f6, knight g5, queen to e5, and here Leavonne resigns the game because the bishop on h7 is simply going to be captured. I also have 3 minutes and 20 seconds versus 37 seconds as well, so all roads are going to lead to Rome. So I get a very, very big win in the Armageddon. This means that I advance to the next round, the quarterfinals, against the former world champion Ding Liren. So same format, 4 games, 10+0, and we're going to pick it up in the first game of the match. So I play the move knight to f3, we get d5, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and now I play the move e3. Now, after all the games against Leavonne where we had the same opening, I decide why not repeat. We get b6, knight c3, bishop d6, takes, check c6, bishop d3, castles, rook e8, and now I play the move queen c2. Ding plays bishop a6, I trade, I go a3 to stop knight b4, and now Ding plays the move knight b8. Now, in my games against Leavonne, Leavonne's idea was to play for c5 with the knight rerouting to e6, but here Ding basically says he's going to bring the knight to d7, play rook c8 guarding the pawn, and it doesn't matter that black has wasted time by moving the knight around because I don't have any way to take advantage. So I go b3, knight d7, bishop b2, rook c8, rook f d1, queen e7, and now I play the move g3, trying to slam the door shut on any threats on the long diagonal. Ding plays knight e4, I go a4 here. Important move because I would love to put the rook on the c file, pressuring the pawn, but then the pawn on a3 is potentially a target. So I go a4, get knight f6, rook c1, knight, knight e4, bishop b2, and now Ding plays move h5. I go queen e2, queen e6, king g2, rook c7, and now I play rook c2, rook c8, rook c1, creating the classic double stack. Now, Ding plays move c5, and what was interesting to me here is I'm moving very, very quickly, but Ding is a little bit slow. You'll notice that after move c5, I'm up 3 minutes on the clock. However, 5 minutes is still a lot of time. If there's one thing I learned from the previous event, the Chessable Masters Tournament, it's that a player needs to be below a certain time frame, certain threshold in order to be under pressure. Because against Magnus, there were a couple of games where I tried to push him on the clock, and we had 3-4 minutes, and it was too early for it. And that is the big takeaway, is that even though I'm up a lot of time, I need to find a way to keep the game going, just massage the position, and get my opponent to around 1 minute. And I feel like if I get anybody to 1 minute or less, and there's dynamic play in the position, I should be able to win the game via flag or on the board. So here I trade, I go queen to d3. Now we have the classic hanging pawns formation, but Ding correctly plays move c4, getting rid of the hanging pawns and trying to push p and create a passed pawn. I take, queen d4, Ding plays f6, logical move. Were you to play bishop c5, for example, there's queen g7, creating the checkmate with the double A battery. So Ding goes f6. Now I play the move rook d1, we get c3, bishop a1, and here Ding plays move bishop e7. Now I could sort of sense that I was in trouble already at this point, and the thing is, when you sense like you're in some trouble at this moment in the game, what I'm thinking in my mind is move fast. No matter what, move fast, try to create a situation where the clock comes into play, because if you can do that, bad things are going to happen for your opponent. So in a sense, you could say I was channeling my inner Nepo. So we get bishop e7. I go queen to d5, trade, and now we get the move rook c4. Now this move is actually the best move in the position, I believe, but as soon as I played rook to d7, Ding started shaking his head. He was very unhappy with what was going on, and it's clear that he was starting to feel the effects of the time come into play. Now the reason this is still very good for black is after bishop to c5 here, black is guarding the pawn on a7 from being captured due to the kebab, and you still have this passed pawn on c3, you have rook to a4 to attack the bishop, and it's still very hard for white to play. Instead, Ding goes king f7. Blundering the pawn on a7 is also apparent to me when I saw Ding's visual reaction over the Zoom call that he simply forgot that rook was guarding this pawn on a4. So Ding goes rook c7, I trade, and now after knight to d4, the endgame we've reached an endgame where I'm up a pawn on the queen side, the pawn on c3 is weak, still should be a draw with correct play, but there are going to be great chances to win. So Ding goes bishop b4, I play f3, king f2, rook a7, rook a2. We get knight c4. Important to note, by the way, that I could already force an endgame, for example, like this, where I have the 4 pawns versus the 3. But in my mind, I was telling myself, I'll be able to force this endgame, but I want my opponent to have a minute or less so the flag is in play. I think a player of Ding's caliber is too good, and he would be able to save the game. So I go rook a2. You get knight c4, king e2, knight b6. Important, by the way, if I were to play the move knight c6, there's a beautiful tactic here where black can sack the rook with rook takes pawn, because if I take the rook after c2, the pawn is simply going through here, and black is going to win the game. So I play the move king e2, knight b6, knight c6, we get c2, takes, bishop d4, knight d5, e4, knight e7, and now I play the move knight a7. Now again, we've reached this endgame where I'm up a minute and 10 seconds on the clock, but I have to be precise here in order to keep the flag alive. And that's the reason I played knight a7, is I figured at some point there will be a trade of the minor pieces, but I need to keep the pieces on as long as I can to flag my opponent. Bishop d6, knight b5, bishop b8, I go bishop c5, knight c6, bishop e3, knight e5, and now I play knight d4. Ding goes bishop a7, I play knight f5, he takes, I take back, we get rook a3, here I play the move h3, and now we get the move g5. Now, as soon as I played h3, I was very unhappy with myself because I thought I should have played the move h4 to stop this move g5, which would keep all 4 pawns on the board in the classic bathtub formation. So I go h3, Ding goes g5, and now I have to play the move h4 rather regrettably here, because if black is able to go h4, suddenly the dark squares become a huge issue with this pawn no longer covering f4. So I go for the move h4, Ding plays g4, and this move actually surprised me. I was sure Ding would take. I think the reason Ding did not go for this endgame specifically is he thought that with a 3 versus 2, he would get flagged. So he goes for the counterplay with g4, but now I can go f4, knight f3, and suddenly after the move knight to f5, this knight on f3, which looks really good as a bastion, suddenly has no squares available at all. So Ding plays rook a1, I go check, king f8, rook h7, rook a4, and at this point I'm simply trying to go for the flag, move very quickly, put maximum pressure on my opponent, and ultimately, as you're going to see, I will succeed here. We reach this position where all the moves come in very, very quickly. I take, rook h8, takes, knight c4, rook e4, king c5, and here I'm at 45 seconds on the clock, so barring something crazy, I will win the game. Ding plays knight e5, I go knight d6, king d4, we get takes, Ding plays rook f3, and now I make a huge mistake with the move knight e4. Now again, with 52 seconds versus 7 seconds, I'm simply trying to go for the flag, and therefore there will be some imprecision. What I should have played was rook g8 check, king h5, knight to f5, as I set up the classic dovetail checkmate. With this move rook to g5, the knight covers both squares, pawn guards the rook, king has no squares available. But I go knight e4, Ding plays g3, and now I play rook g8. Knight back to d6 is apparently winning, but at this point with a 44-second lead on the clock, I know that the only thing that matters is don't make a big blunder, as I'll be able to flag. So eventually, we reach this endgame where Ding runs out of time. After I play the move rook to g8, I get the big flag, I win the game, and with that, I take a 1-0 lead in this match. Now, I would go on to win the second game as well before drawing a very smooth... Actually, the third game wasn't that smooth, but after drawing the third game, I would end up winning this match very cleanly by a score of 2.5 to half. This means that I advance to the semifinals tomorrow. I can finish no lower than 4th place overall, where I will play either Vladimir Fedoseev from Russia or Jan Pomoshi, the former World Championship challenger. So, I do apologize if this recap felt a little bit rushed at times, but I do have to get ready for Title Tuesday, which I will be streaming in approximately 6 minutes. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from day 1 of the Chess.com Classic. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more great recaps in the coming days, both from the Chess.com Classic, but also the upcoming Norway Chess Tournament as well. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!